Bonjour, Kinamagin Ireland Dijnikas, and welcome to this production of the My Math Network. Today's edition, Chapter 8, Lesson 1, Fractions and Division. Fractions and division are your two favorite words in the English language, but I need you to slow down and let's get ready for the lesson. We will have a new essential question, and that essential question in this chapter is, how are factors and multiples helpful in solving problems? But before we get deeper into the lesson, we need to look at what the homework will bring us today. You're going to see some kind of like bar diagrams, and we're going to learn about writing a fraction using a model. And we'll also kind of get a chance to identify how fractions and division are very much a related tool. When we start this lesson, you should be on page 551. That's where our packet will begin. But first, let me model this for you. What is the relationship between fractions and division? Go home today. Find one cookie. Go up to a sibling and offer to share the cookie. What are you going to do next? You're going to split it in half. In half, which is written as 1/2, like this, is going to represent this part of the cookie. You're going to want to share it. You're going to keep one piece out of the two possible. But this is really like dividing 1 divided by 2, which would give us 0.5, which is read as 5/10 or known as 1/2 when we start talking about fractions. Let's clear that. Represent each situation with a model, then use division to find the answer. In art class, 2 pounds of clay are split equally among 5 students. How many pounds of clay does each person get? So we have 2 pounds, and it's going to be going into 5 people. This is going to be kind of a tough piece. So here's our 2 pounds, and I'm going to represent a different color. It's 1 person's, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So you can see person 1, person 2, person 3, which is getting some from each of the 2 pounds, and 5. There's a way to write this, though. I got 2 pounds of clay divided amongst how many people? 5. So it comes out as 2/5 pounds. And we'll later teach you how to convert this into a decimal. But for right now, this is kind of where we're at. If we were doing this as a straight division problem, I would have 2 divided by 5. 5 doesn't go into 2, so I'm going to need to annex zeros. And when I do that, I add my decimal point at top and bottom, and I put a 0. 5 goes into 24 times. 5 times 4 is 20. Subtract, I get a 0. So it is also known as 0.4 pounds. And there's other ways to turn that quicker in another lesson. But this is how I could divide it to find out how much each person gets. This is the decimal form. This is the decimal fraction form. These are equivalent. All right, there are 3 pumpkins used to make 7 pies. How much of a pumpkin is used to make each pie? So we can do the same thing. We're going to have 7 into 3. It's not going to work, so I'm going to have to annex zeros. And this could be an interesting one. So we start out at 4, 28. Let's go 7 times 4. Subtract, I get a 2. Annex another 0. Becomes a 0. Put a 2. 2 times 7 is 14. Get a 6. Another 0. So it's just 8. 56. And I could keep going and see what decimal I get to, but it's going to be a long one. There's a better way to do this, and that's using a fraction. I take 3 divided by 7. That has a representative decimal, but it's an easy way to write it, and it's pretty visible to people. I'm going to go ahead and clear this. You can see that they want just the fractions, which is a good way to do it at this point. All right, Miss Tomlinson is making fruit punch. She mixes 2 gallons of pineapple juice, 3 gallons of apple juice, 1 gallon of cranberry juice. If the fruit punch is to be shared equally by 50 people, how much of a gallon will each person receive? So we're going to figure out how many gallons. There's 2 plus 3 is 5 plus 1 is 6. So we have 6 divided by 50. That's a way to write that. There are other ways you can do it. I will talk later about simplifying it, where you can divide top and bottom and get 3/25. But right now, you're okay with this part, the 6 over 50. You can see that they simplified it here as well. And we'll talk a lot more about simplifying early on in this chapter. All right, so let's get into the book. And this is Math in My World Example Basic. It's found on page 551. And if you need to find that, you should pause the video, go grab it, and unpause the video once you have it. If you're missing it completely for whatever reason, you should have a sheet of paper, something to write with, so that you can create a artifact that you can use to look back on when you're doing the assignment. The vocabulary words, and those are the ones highlighted, and just for the record, they tend to be the answers to the vocab check questions throughout the chapter. A fraction is a number that names equal parts of a whole or parts of a set. So when we had that cookie example, if they were assuming they were equal, you got 1 part out of 2, so 1 over 2. The numerator is the number of parts represented. That's the top number. So in this 2/3 right here, that's the numerator. And the bottom number is the denominator. That's the number of parts in the whole. So the number of parts represented, parts in a whole. You're going to need to know those terms. Numerator and denominator will be used more times than I want to count for you over the course of the remainder of this academic year. And it's words that you will need to use pretty much through the rest of your schooling. All right, so on example basic, here on the bottom of 551, remember the expectation is that you fill things in as we go. If I wanted you just to listen, I would do this as an audio recording and not a visual. It benefits you if you fill this in, and that's what I expect of students both live and those of you who are watching the video later, although I do appreciate your presence. All right, so Dylan, Drake, and Jade are sharing 2 small pizzas equally after their lacrosse game. How much does each person get? And these 2 drawings here represent the 2 whole pizzas. Here's Basic and Niche. And because each of them is getting an equal portion, we divided it into each pizza into 3 parts. Basic, Niche in this way, Beijik, Niche, Nisue. And to make things simpler, they color coded and put names here for you. So you can see Jade's portion here and portion there, Dylan's portion here and portion there, and Drake's portion here and portion there. So how many portions did each individual get? Well, Beijik and Niche. So fill in the 2 there. That's your numerator. That is your number of parts represented. And how many slices are in an individual pizza? Because it's talking about of a pizza, not of the pizzas. Well, you can count them. Beijik, Niche, Nisue. Or 3 in English. So each person's getting 2/3 of a pizza. But Mr. Ireland, they're in different pizzas. Sure. But what if I just move Jade's pizza, other slice over here, Dylan's over there, and Drake's just going to get 1 from each pizza. Sorry, Drake. Then you could see the represented, the yellow and the yellow together. That Pac-Man almost with a wide mouth would be 2/3 of it. So make sure that's written in. There is a spot on the screen that just off of it that says the amount of pizza each person gets is between what 2 whole numbers, and I'll get that in just a second. On the next slide, apparently. And they didn't even give you a space. But let's talk about it. 2/3 is between 0 and 1. If there was a whole number here, that would be where I'm beginning. But because there is no whole number, I'm going to start at 0. And there is no whole number, so I haven't yet made it to 1. So it's between 0 and 1. If this was a number line, here's 1/3, 2/3. It's right here. So it's between the 0 and the 1. All right, let's continue on to the top of page 552. And this is example niche. It says Ray and Bailey are sharing 3 brownies equally. How much does each person get? So we have a model here. Here's the brownies. 1 brownie, 2 brownies, 3. And they're split. Now, if you think back to when we started doing models of division, particularly when it was decimals, there's a relationship between decimals and fractions. Remember, we start putting them in groups. Here's Ray's group, here's Bailey's group. Each of them gets a brownie. But there's 1 whole one left over, and we need to regroup them. And instead of regrouping them into 10 pieces like we did through the decimals, we'll regroup it into 2 because it only needs to be split into 2 people. So now we have 1 whole brownie plus a half a brownie. But if we're writing this into something that's a little more manageable, we need to have common denominators, so the number at the bottom. So we're going to split it all into 2. So each brownie technically is divided into 2 parts. That's your numerator or denominator, parts in a whole. And then Ray had Beijik, Niche, in the Nisue pieces. There's your 3. And Bailey had Beijik, Niche, and Nisue pieces, the other 3. So as it turns out, they had 3 halves of a brownie. And we'll talk to you more later about how to convert that into a proper fraction, because you could say, but Mr. Ireland, 3 halves, that's more than 1. You're right. Here's Ray's whole and Ray's half. So 3 halves is really equivalent to 1.5, but we'll talk more about that later. And there's nothing to write in on the top part. So let's go on to the next slide, which probably will amount to your later that I just mentioned. And of course it is. So each person gets 1.5 brownies. So 3.5 equals 1 and 1/2. Or 3 halves equals 1 and 1/2. Basically how they do that is go like this. 2 divided by 3. And that goes in 1 time. So my whole number is 1. 1 times 2. My remainder is 1. So if you see here, and I don't even need the decimal portion on this one, this became my whole number. My remainder became the top number, and my divisor became my denominator. Whole number, numerator, denominator. And what is this in between? Well, it starts with a 1, so it's between 1 and what's the next whole number? If I had a full 1 here, between 1 and 2. So go ahead and write that in, and then we'll go to the guided practice here in about 30 seconds. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and clear the screen. And that's always my warning to you that I'm about to clear the screen. If you need it in more time, always feel free to pause the video. All right, now let's go ahead and clear it. You see the answers there. All right, we have a guided practice. This is the one where I'm going to shout it out, and you should answer it in your head. You don't need to shout it out if you're watching it by yourself, because parents or guardians might think it's a little weird. So we have 2 bags of birdseed are used to fill 3 bird feeders. How much birdseed does each feeder use? Represent the situation using a model. All right, so we have 3 bird feeders. So let's split each one into 3 parts. We're assuming they're all the same, and we're assuming my artwork is better. So we have 3 bird feeders. This one goes, these parts go into feeder 1, feeder 2, and feeder 3. So out of these portions here, how many does each one get? Basic, niche. And how many portions are in each bag? Basic, niche, Nisue. So 2 divided by 3 is 2/3. Go ahead and fill that in. Now we're going to get a chance for you to practice some here in just a moment, and that'll be after the talk about it. So I'm going to go ahead and clear the screen. You see the answers there. Give an example of how a fraction represents a division situation in real life. That cookie example was a good one. We know how that works. We also know that everyone wants the bigger half, but realistically, the half should be the same. All right, I want you guys here to do number 2. And when we do these problems, the expectation is that you'll pause the video, fill it in, unpause the video, and check your work, and we'll talk about it. So you may go ahead and pause your video now. Welcome back. Let's see how you did. 4 families equally share 5 pies. How much pie will each family receive? If it asks for a model, you're going to have to do something like this. Let's do our 5 pies. Basic, niche, Nisue, Niuwen, and Nanen. And family 1 gets this one. Family 2 gets this one. Family 3 gets this one. Family 4 gets this one. This one's going to get divided up. So I'm going to make this a bigger one just so you can see it better. And it needs to be divided into 5 pieces. 1, 2. We'll pretend these sections are all the same. So each family is going to get a piece. 1, 2. Oops, I see an error. Let's back that up a second. Break down my drawings here. Back it up. And it's always important to reread these situations because sometimes you will make a quick error. So here's our section of pie now. Family 1 gets this section. Family 2 gets this section. Family 3, this one. And family 4, this one. So each family got, and if you picture these each of these pies can be considered in fourths. So each whole one represents 4/4, because if the top and number bottom, or the numerator and denominator are the same, it represents 1, plus one other piece. So they had the 4 pieces plus the 5th piece. There's your 5/4. And each pie is in 4. And you can look at that as 1 whole and 1/4. So 5 divided by 4 is 5/4. And if you look here, you can see on my 1 means I'm going with that. And then it's the next digit's always going to be the next number up, if we're looking between two whole numbers. So it's going to be between 1 and 1 plus 1, which is 2. If there is nothing there, you'd say 0. All right, let's go ahead and check the next one. Actually, you're going to do the next one first. Let's get ahead of ourselves. I'd like you all to do number 3. Again, pause the video, and when you're ready, we'll move forward. You may go ahead and pause the video now. Welcome back. Let's see how you did. 6 bags of soil are used to fill 5 flower pots. How much soil does each flower pot use? Now you could start with 5 flower pots and a 6 bag, just like we did. And then you have 6 divided by 5, 6 bags, 5 pots. So each group, we had a full bag in each one, and then 1/5 of a bag in the others. 6/5. And that's between, again, 1 and 2. All right, let's look at the homework portion for today. You're going to continue to do something similar. There's only a handful of problems. Remember the vocabulary check. Look back at 551. That's where you're going to find those vocabulary words. And if you have any questions, make sure you reach out to me during class or during office hours. Ways of submitting this: you can turn the paper in at your next scheduled school day. So if you're in group A right now, you would turn it in on a Monday or Tuesday, group B on Thursdays or Fridays. You could also put your name on top of both sides, scan or take a picture of those sides and text or email it to me. Or you could solve the problems and then go ahead and write it in the Google form. And on the Google form, if you're writing a fraction, that's like an example of 2/7 here. What I would like you to realize is that you can go 2 and then the slash that's right underneath the question mark, and then your digit. So it'll look more like this on the Google form, but that is the accepted answer. I hope this lesson got you off on the right foot on this brand new unit. If you have any questions, reach out to me during office hours or send me an email at mireland@psychchipschool.net. You have a Minogishigan Minwa Bama P.